Hello class, I'm making this video to explain the steps of the poetry research presentation project. As you will see, this project and related assignments have been divided into several weeks, and these weeks will be broken up throughout modules. For this project, each of you will select a poet. You will be the only person presenting on your poet, and once you have selected your poet, you will join groups based on the time period or the era in which your poet lived. Some parts of this project will be completed individually while others will be completed as a group. And I have a list below that I have labeled so that you know exactly which assignment you'll be doing on your own and which one will be done in groups. Step 1 will be to sign up for groups. Once you have selected a poet, then you will sign up for groups based on the time period in which your poet has lived. And I have provided a link in here with a brief explanation on how to join groups. Step 2 will be to participate in your first group activity by introducing yourself and your poet in the group discussion board. Then we will begin our research in step 3. So you will begin your research and post your sources and annotations in your group discussion board. And keep in mind that for each assignment, you'll have more detailed explanations in the assignment links themselves. Step 4 will be an individually submitted assignment, which is your annotated bibliography. Step 5 is another group activity, which would be to complete a brainstorm on thesis statements that you will use for your presentation. Step 6 will be a final group activity, which will be your actual presentation. You will complete your presentation using the template provided, and each member of the group is responsible for their portion of the presentation. Step 7 will be to do peer responses. Each student will be assigned 2 groups, 2 presentations to review, and there is a rubric for you to complete based on that presentation. Step 8 is a reflection checkpoint. This will be the final step of our unit in which you reflect on the project and the unit itself, and this will be individually submitted. Here are some of the details for the final product, which is the presentation. It will be a visual presentation. The research requirement is that a minimum of 2 secondary sources from the online library database per group member, and I have detailed below where you would include that research. So in your presentation, you'll have a title, you'll have the names of the group members, the thesis statement that you completed as a group, then the first part that would include some of the research based on the time period. The next part will begin the individual presentations of the poets and their poems. So this would be your second source, library source that you would use, which would be one biographical source per group member. And again, I'll show you where you would put that in the sample presentation. Followed by analysis of 3 to 4 poems by each poet, a group conclusion, and a works cited page. Presentations must include in-text citations and works cited, and then individually completed would be 2 peer responses or reviews per student. And I have a link built into the assignment. So this template I've created this template in Microsoft Sway. And you have access to all Microsoft products through my HCC. And I just want to show you what it would look like. I'll press the play button here so you can see what it would look like once it's completed. And then this is actually the building process and how you would create it. So if you press play, this is what a sway would look like. So as you scroll, each section is split up into section headers. You can add images and quotes. It's really fun presentation format. Scroll down and you can see, and I'll show you again how each section header and then the information would go here and so on. So let's go back up to the top and click edit. So before you start to work on your group presentations, please click the 3 dots and click duplicate this sway, which would copy it into creating a new one so that you're not editing the template. So let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so you'll see that it has section headers and then little plus signs. So for each section header, you can type what you want in here. It allows you to add images and so on. So you can see that I just went through and created a sample template for modern poets. And if you click plus, it gives you option to do section heading, text, image, stack, or upload, and different options there. So as you go through, you can see how I created the first part with the different images and the quotes that go over top of it. And then here it says intergroup names. This is where you would put your names, and then begin here. So this is the thesis statement. As you saw, it pops out as a header, and then the text would be where you would put the actual thesis statement. This second part is based on research on the era. You can see you can add an image here and a text header. And in the text cards, this is where you would put your individual information about the time period. So each group member needs to present a source that follow that information with an analysis. You would include in-text citations, and then you would list that at the source in the works cited at the end. So you're looking at the history of the era, the time period in which your poets lived. So each of you will find a source based on that time period using the HTC library databases, and then use the information from that source to interpret that information and write about it. You would think of this like a paragraph about the source. You would want to, each of you write in here, you present the information and then analyze it. So it's almost like you're writing 2 paragraphs on your source, and each student would do that for their own article that they would find. And as it says here, continue adding text cards by clicking the plus and selecting text to have enough sections per group member. So you would go here, click text, and then you can continue adding sections. Part 3 would be the poets and poetry. Then each of you have your own section for your poet. You can arrange the poets in alphabetical order or by birth dates. You can decide as a group. So here you would put, again, section 3 would be for one poet, section 4 for another poet, section 5 for another poet, depending on how many group members you have. So here you would put the author's name and add your name too, so I know who is responsible for each section. Then you would begin with a biography on your author, and same concept as the research one that we talked about above. Here you would find an article that's a biography. You would use library databases, namely you could use Biography in Context. It's a good database. And you would present information about your poet's biography. Please do not list everything that this person did. Just focus on the main highlights that you think are most evident through their writing, or you think that basically come up more in terms of or help you better understand that person's writing. And then you would analyze the research in the next card, and then begin with poem number 1. So each of you will be presenting 3 poems on your poet. So here you could do a sample poem. You can find them on different websites like poets.org or poetryfoundation.org, or sometimes you'll find a website for your poet specifically. So you don't want to use the library for your poems. You want to use the web or a book. An actual book, a collection of poems. So here you would do poem number 1. You could find a stanza, a few lines, and then follow up with explanation of that, of your poem, of what you think it means, what literary elements that you think they use, and what does it signify, etc., etc. You're analyzing your poem here. And as you can see here, I put a little video reading of the poem. Please feel free to do that. It'll liven up your presentation and give a different perspective to the reading of the poem. Then you would continue, each of you would continue with analysis of poem 1, and then poem 2, analysis of poem 2, poem 3, analysis of poem 3, and then you would repeat that process for the next poet. So each of you will have your own section, and again, follow the same template as the one above. The second to last section would be a conclusion, and you would basically work together to contrast or compare the information in your PowerPoint, and what realization have you had throughout the presentation. And then finally, a works cited. Here you would list your articles and poems in alphabetical order, and so there should be a citation for each source, including the biographical ones and the historical ones, as well as for each poem. And that's it. And congratulations, you have completed your final project.